Goal.
Welcome to the third episode of Not Just the Water Boys. Today, we're going to be talking about LeBron James and the playoffs.
It's a long day without you, my friend, and I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again.
So we're coming down to the last stretch of NBA basketball before some playoff action, and LeBron James and the Lakers find themselves as the 11th seed, 6.5 games behind the current 8th seed, the Clippers, who are still playing well even though they traded away their best couple of guys. But that's a different story. So back to LeBron and them. Can you guys even consider them a good team at this point? And what do you think this does to LeBron's legacy?
Well, first of all, I do still think that the Lakers are a good team. Up until Christmas Day when they beat the Warriors and LeBron got injured, they were playing their best basketball. They were up to the 4th seed in the Western Conference, and they were playing good team basketball, right? I honestly think after that injury, they went on what was it? It was like a 6-18 stretch or whatever.
They dropped
Yeah, they went from the 4th seed to the 7th seed in a matter of a month. And
10th
then as soon as LeBron came back, it never was the same. Lonzo's battling injuries, and just overall the team chemistry wasn't that great after the trade deadline. So I still think Lakers have potential to be a playoff contender next season. I just think the season's over for them.
So the Lakers, they're not a good team as of now, right? They were at the beginning of the season, but they've lost Lonzo Ball, great IQ, good floor general. LeBron hasn't been the same since his injury. They have Ingram out right now and Kuzma. And also ever since that trade talk occurred and then they had the Lonzo Ball injury, they've never been the same. Because not only are they missing a few key guys, their morale is also in the dumps, and that's a huge thing.
Wow.
But LeBron's legacy, it's not going to be fractured that badly by this season and not making the playoffs. Because we just saw him. He just passed MJ, right? He just passed him in points with 1,241 less shots. I mean, he's going to be a great guy. But in order to maintain his legacy further and not completely drop off like he has this season, he needs to be willing to take a bit of a pay cut and do a Tom Brady move in order to acquire some more good people to LA so they can have a really good contending team. Because LeBron's at a point in his career where he's not young enough and healthy enough to be able to carry a team by himself, but he's still a huge threat for a team to have. Yeah, I think one thing with the Lakers is they're injury prone. It's either LeBron out, and when he's playing, Lonzo's out. When Lonzo and him are both playing, it's just continuous. Rajon Rondo's suffered injury. Kuzma and Ingram have suffered injury. And when you talk about those 5 guys, they're some of the best. They're the best 5 players on that Lakers team, and they're all been battling with injury at different times this season, and that really is going to take a toll on their team. And that also shows, though, next year, yeah, sure, if all 5 guys are healthy the entire year, they could be a playoff team, but they're not going to be a championship contender because they have no depth. Every team right now that you could say is a championship contender is at least 10 deep. Raptors are 10 deep. Bucks are 10 deep. Even Houston's 10 deep. Oklahoma City maybe 9 deep. Even the Pacers, they're the 3 seed in the East, not really a contender, but they're 10 deep. Brooklyn Nets are 10 deep as well. All these other playoff teams, one injury won't set them back that much. And then the Warriors, I mean, you could argue that they're 10 deep, but even if they're not, they have 5 superstars. That's a different thing. The Lakers don't have 5 superstars. They have a young core, a post-prime good player, and Rajon Rondo, who's just a great IQ player, but has his moments of stupidity. So, as this conversation shifts, what do you guys think that Magic Johnson, LeBron James, and the Lakers need to do in the offseason? And because they've given up on the season, right? Restricting LeBron's minutes after he said playoff mode. What do you guys think they need to do in order to be a contender for the next season? Because if this team isn't a championship contender in the next 2 seasons, even not in the next season, then it's one of the biggest upsets that have come to sports.
So I think the obvious answer to that would be signing another big free agent this summer. Obviously, the Lakers aren't a playoff team right now. They're a lottery team, so they do have their first-round pick this year as leverage in a trade. So I wouldn't rule out Anthony Davis or potentially Kyrie as a signing. So
yeah, I think a really good chance would be Kyrie going to the Lakers because, look, Boston, they're playing really bad basketball this year. If they're going down, they won't want to keep Kyrie. They'll just reboot against around their young stars. If you have Kyrie going to LA, then Anthony Davis won't want to go to Boston because there'll be no other superstar there, and it'll feel like he'll be doing the same thing over again. He'll go to LA too then. I think that's one chance. If that doesn't happen, Kyrie stays, then I think a really possible thing is Kemba Walker. He's a free agent at the end of the season, and last year he said that he's getting a little disappointed with the lack of playoff appearances from Charlotte. So I think it could be likely that he goes over with LeBron. He's an all-star level point guard who could really help with your two injury-prone guys in Rajon Rondo and Lonzo Ball. So you just said that Boston is an awful team right now, but like they were a week ago. This past week, they have gotten so much better. They were desperate for a win, right? Like I think 4 or 5 game losing streak. The Warriors they got blown out by Boston, and they're rising back up to that peak they used to be at. But as of now, as I see it, I don't know how you guys do. In the summer, there are 3 big teams in the Warriors that are going to experience the most drastic changes. That's the Knicks, the Celtics, the Lakers, and all of those are going to be intertwined. And then superstars from the Warriors. For example, there's those rumors about Kyrie and KD linking up in New York City. And then if that happens, Anthony Davis won't want to go to the Celtics. Then he'll be more prone to coming to Los Angeles. And also, Klay Thompson's contract expires. Him, LeBron, and Anthony Davis could all come to Los Angeles. Because Anthony Davis is moving, and he's moving between those 3 teams just mentioned. So moving into our next segment, we'll talk about NFL, especially Antonio Brown and all the stuff that's just happened today. With us right now, we have our special insider, Rajpal Ball. So now to Abi for our basic synopsis.
All right, so earlier today we got a rumor that Antonio Brown was being traded to the Buffalo Bills, only for Antonio Brown to work another miracle and talk his way out of another city. So personally, I think this was the Pittsburgh's front office's way of punishing Antonio Brown for being such a diva. I mean, if you go to Picture Dictionary, flip over to the word mediocre, you see the Buffalo Bills logo right there, front and center. So personally, I mean, you really can't think of a worse city than Buffalo for football.
And in the thesaurus, it's Pittsburgh.
Haha. All right. So now moving on to Rajpal Ball.
Antonio Brown commented on the NFL's Instagram post regarding his trade saying nope. I mean, that just shows you all you need to know about how players control their destiny in today's market. I mean, props to him for doing that. Second off, what a diva. I mean, we are just dealing with the most dysfunctional receiver in NFL history. Couple that with the fact that Total Divas appears on E! Network, not the NFL Network.
Not a sponsor.
Yeah, I do not support E! Network. But anyways, Antonio Brown, he was wearing silver and black today in an Instagram workout he put to his story, basically signifying the fact that maybe he wants to play for the Raiders. And they were saying that in the background, and the comments feed was all play for the Raiders. So he goes to the Raiders. I think that's just a downgrade on all fronts. That team has literally no one. Their coach is overpaid. Their owner doesn't care about winning. Their general manager, Reggie McKenzie, I think he got fired. But it's just bad to worse. And the guy's not worth a first-round pick. If you have half a brain, why would you give up your first-round future for a diva? I know he's phenomenal. He sets all these records. But what is the instrumental value of Antonio Brown? I think that's what we really need to talk about. What is his instrumental value? Because that's the most subjective part of the NFL.
I really like that you brought that up because, first and foremost, if you're going to trade for a 30-year-old receiver that had set records, and he is a really good receiver. Let's not get that messed up. He's a great receiver. He is a record-breaking receiver for Pittsburgh. But, outside of Ben Roethlisberger's system, I don't think Antonio Brown's going to be the same receiver that he was in Pittsburgh. Let's face it. He's a very system-inclined wide receiver. The way he runs his routes is very Ben Roethlisberger-friendly, if you will. I think the value that he brings from other teams, experience, but again, that's only from being Ben Roethlisberger's wide receiver. Like, if you're trying to go for a championship, I do not think you tried for Antonio Brown, because not only does he bring a big distraction to your locker room, you also give like your players a sign that you're not like in control. You give the players control of the locker room, and then though that is not a bad thing, it's not a good thing either, because you need leadership in order to be a championship contender in the NFL, in any sport in general.
Well, yeah, so as you brought up, Antonio Brown, one of the reasons of his huge amounts of success in Pittsburgh was them adapting to him and throwing it more for routes that he runs. Moving to a team, first of all, you can't have the best of both worlds. You can't get paid a lot and be on a championship contender. But also, moving on to his next team, they're going to have to, in order to fully have him, like, integrated and successful in their program, that team's going to have to shift for him and deny a lot of the current talent they already have for a post-prime receiver.
So I think the next question we have to ask ourselves is what team can actually satisfy Antonio Brown's needs? Because first of all, they need to have cap space in order to adapt to his demand of guaranteed money, right? Also, they need to be somewhat of a championship contender, meaning that they have a potential future championship run in the next couple of years. So what team do you guys think Antonio Brown would fit perfectly on, giving his demands?
That's the big thing. I can't really name any because there's not that many teams that are willing to give up that much to acquire Antonio Brown in the first place, and that many teams that are willing, that are in playoff contention, that have the money and resources to be able to like have them on their team.
With the league at where it is right now, I don't see any team even acquiring Antonio Brown and then being a championship contender, right? The teams that are going to dominate the league for the next 5-10 years, they're already kind of set up, right? You have the Rams, which will be good for another 5 years. You have the Chiefs, who will be good. Patriots, I mean, of course, they'll be pretty good. And then you have the Cowboys, up and coming. You have all these teams, they're already set. They have their set systems. Antonio Brown doesn't fit in with any team that's already set as a good team. He's going to have to go to a lower level team.
I could see Antonio Brown on the Indianapolis Colts because they own the 26th pick in the draft, and if you get him with T.Y. Hilton, that would be dynamite for defenses because T.Y. Hilton already burns you for like over 100 yards receiving a game. You put him with Antonio Brown in that system with the culture established with the Super Bowl winning head coach Frank Reich. I mean, that is just, I think that's dynamite for, I think it's a no-brainer for the Colts because their defense also, they have Darius Leonard, who set the league record for tackles. Pro Bowl snub, by the way. Shout out to Darius Leonard. He's great. Another big thing with Antonio Brown, he expects 35% of the targets. So in 2017, Ben Roethlisberger targeted him 34.1% of his passes. I think he has to get away from the fact that I need the ball, and he has to become the guy of, I will get the ball the most out of the receivers, but it will not be to my liking. Because if he wants to win, which I know in his heart he claims to do this on national media, his first priority right now at age 30 is winning a ring. Well, if you want to win a ring, you got to go to a team that has a late first round pick, so the Colts, and go there. Oh, also the Seahawks. Seahawks could take a chance on him.
Yeah, going back to the Colts, I actually like that a lot because Andrew Luck is a lot like Ben Roethlisberger. But of course younger. They're both pocket passers. They're both tall, big, and strong-armed. So I really feel like for Antonio Brown, adjusting to Andrew Luck wouldn't be as much of a jump. And also, like you said, with T.Y. Hilton, Antonio Brown, that would be dynamite for other defenses. Also, the Colts, if you look at the AFC South, you have the Texans and you have the Jags with potentially Nick Foles. I really think the Colts could do some damage next year if everyone stays healthy.
You just brought up a good point. The Jaguars could honestly use him, and he'd get so many targets. That actually might be the best location. Nick Foles with him, I think that would actually be dynamite too.
Do the Jaguars?
Oh, a lot of things would be dynamite.
Also, I believe the Jags do have the cap room for Antonio Brown's salary, which they could adapt into a guaranteed.
I think the Jags would be a little more TNT than dynamite, but it'd still be great.
So the Jaguars, yes, that would be a great match for them, but I don't think that their front office is really looking for him. The mix of them would be great, but I doubt there's even been an offer from them so far to get Antonio Brown. It's probably Pittsburgh instigating it, but they wouldn't even try to give it to the Jaguars because that's just increased competition for themselves.
At this rate, I'm just waiting for YouTube videos of Jalen Ramsey versus Antonio Brown in OTAs and training camp. I think that would be hilarious because both of them are so high egos and they both think they're the best. Just imagine them practicing against each other every week. Like, that would just be so fun to see. But we can fantasize about this all we want, but bottom line, like, the Jags have an early first-round pick, I believe. I doubt that they're going to give that up for Antonio Brown. So we'll see what happens. And back to Abi.
So do you really think Antonio Brown's worth a first-round pick? Because, I mean, you see other aging receivers and other players getting traded for, like, second-round, third-round picks. Thing is, and Amari Cooper was a special scenario because, like we said in an earlier episode, Amari Cooper was regarded as a really good teammate. He's also on his rookie contract. So trading a first-round pick for him is worth it because you don't have to pay, like, record money for a receiver, right?
I think you could give him a second and a third for Antonio. I think that'd be a no-brainer if you're a contending team. But if you're not contending, you can't give up a high pick for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. As Rajpal said, I doubt any team would be willing to give up a first-round pick for an aging post-prime wide receiver.
No, he's not post-prime.
He's not
I wouldn't say he's post-prime yet, but, I mean, still, first-round pick.
the end of his prime.
Yeah, his contract is massive. It was a record amount. He's the highest-paid wide receiver in the league. Giving a first-round pick really doesn't give the team value because when you look at first-round picks in the NFL, you really look for value there because a lot of teams, they build through the draft because their contracts are so affordable and you still get good players, right? They're young and they're impressionable, so you can really mold them into your system. So that's the value with the first-round pick. I don't think Antonio Brown satisfies any of that because with Antonio Brown, you need to redo your offense because, for example, on the Colts, because like right now you have one number one wide receiver in T.Y. Hilton, right? Mm-hmm. You can't really name another wide receiver on the Colts, right? Try. Like, you can't.
I mean, they have Eric Ebron, Jack Doyle. They have a phenomenal tight end core, but I don't think the Colts.
Yeah.
Like,
wide receivers.
but do they have? I think they have a West Coast offense with Frank Reich. But I mean, that would be a pretty good fit. The Jaguars are power run, but Fournette's injury prone.
Yeah.
So that, I think, like, if Antonio goes there, that'd be a culture change. But Nick Foles is a deep throw bomber, so him with AB, if AB becomes a legit deep, like a better deep threat than he already is, then I think that would be really good.
Another point to Antonio Brown's value, I really think he makes your offense more flexible, right? Because Antonio Brown can really run any type of route you want him to do, right? I mean, no, think about it.
Okay, as we mentioned earlier, he's not flexible. He needs the majority of the passes to go through him. He's a route runner. He's not.
I didn't mean flexible as in like teammate flexible. I meant flexible as in he can run a amount of routes and get the ball.
I mean, you yourself just said that teams would have to mold to him.
Yeah.
So that right there is a huge issue, and like trading away young and cheap talent for Antonio Brown.
I think like you guys are both right. So first off, Antonio Brown has a very diverse and broad route tree, which is something every Hall of Fame player has. Shannon Sharp on Undisputed always talks about how the great receivers have a route tree that's adaptable. If your route tree is big, you can fit in any offense. I believe AB can fit in any offense, but he will take all the touches. So that's the one thing. It's like T.Y. Hilton. If AB gets traded to the Colts, T.Y. Hilton will have to accept the lesser role because Antonio Brown has proven he can't. Even though Juju is not as proven as Antonio Brown is, he's still like AB could not accept, fewer targets. So.
I think that's it with this whole NFL thing. That was some good debate, and I think we're going to move on now to our conspiracy theory. We'd quickly like to thank Rajpal again for coming. That was some great debate you added. Always a pleasure. So, yeah. So, welcome to our brand new segment, Conspiracy Theories in Modern Day Sports. If you guys like this, the 19 subscribers, we'll continue doing it for the future. Subscriber of the month, we are introducing that also, is Veer Mystery for always commenting, letting us know what he likes and dislikes, and helping us further better our content. So, our conspiracy for this week is our modern day sports like NBA, NFL, their guidelines influenced by classical socialism beliefs and traits. So first of all, we're not talking about revolutionary Marxist socialism or like where you have a choice in utopian socialism. We're talking about the 1848 classical socialism, where it's strictly about redistributing wealth and resources to help better out everything and even the playing field.
So the first reason we believe that modern day sports leagues are rather socialist is that, like, first of all, the most commonly known value of socialism is the redistribution of wealth, right? So let's look at how these leagues get their money. They get it through TV deals with the 4 big networks. They get it through merchandise sales and ticket sales, right? So what the league does as a whole, the commissioners, for example, the NBA and NFL, Adam Silver and Roger Goodell, what they do, they pool all this money together and they distribute it among the teams in the league evenly, right? So that's the first reason we believe.
Another reason would be like, for example, the draft, right? Every year, the worst teams get the higher up picks to even out the playing field. Like in NBA, the 15th seed, like the lowest seed, they're always, the lottery picks are the teams that did bad. Then also you have the luxury taxes, salary caps, to make sure that one team doesn't get too much money and can't recruit all the players they want. That point can be tied back into English soccer. Because if you look at soccer, European soccer, then you see that there's been like 5 or 6 teams that have been dominating for the last couple decades, and that's because they've had the money, they've had the great players, and they've continuously had the support and great strength. And the other teams, they can't really compete with that, so the good players will go there and they'll just keep going. So yeah, another instance is the draft processes. How the worse the team record is, the higher the pick they get, right? So they can always get new talent to help them out.
Yeah, also, just to clarify, we're not being political with this. We don't favor socialism or capitalism or anything in terms of sports. Basically, this is just about sports. Let's clarify that first and foremost. Like, of course, we're American. We love our capitalism. We like being free and all that. But this is just something we noticed and we thought we'd talk about.
Before we end out, I would like to give a special shout out to McKinney Boyd, AP European History, and Mr. Scott Martin for informing us about all this information, letting us have a great understanding of European history and being able to apply it to modern day.
Also, I'd like to shout out Period 4 U.S. History at Imagine. Thank you, Miss Bearden, for teaching me the values of socialism.
That wraps up our episode for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and we'll see you next week. If I could click it.